Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello, Legal Eagles. My name is Zubair Abbasi, and I'm live from Oxford. I head the Global Institute of Law, Oxford, and today we shall have a session on do's and don'ts of doing an LLM from abroad. We are joined by Ms. Maham Naveed, who herself did her LLM from Yale Law School. So we shall have two parts of our session. During the first part, Maham will talk about LLM generally and what are the pros and cons of pursuing an LLM from abroad. And during the second session, we shall have question and answers where you can ask any question from Maham and I will convey your questions to her. Okay, Maham, you may first of all introduce yourself very briefly and then tell us why our legal egos should or shouldn't do an LLM from abroad.
Thank you very much, sir. So, my name is Maham Naveed. I did my undergraduate from LUMS in Pakistan, and then I went on to do my LLM from Yale Law School. Following that, I worked for a bit at Sherman and Sterling in Paris, and then I've moved to now Islamabad, where I work for the Attorney General's office as a consultant in the International Disputes Unit. I specialize generally in international law, most particularly in law of conflict and public international law. So when I've a lot of people have spoken to me about what is the right time for them to do an LLM. Once they do decide to do an LLM, how they should go about it. So I'm going to like divide this part into two parts. The first is whether what time you should do an LLM. So to be honest, this varies from for different people, and it also depends on for the two things: firstly where you want to go, and secondly what career path you want. So speaking from a practitioner's perspective, some people prefer doing an LLM right after their undergrad, which makes sense in the sense that people would want to do that and get that done, and so that once they enter the practice of law, they don't take a break from it. Especially if you're at a law firm where every year counts towards a partnership track, so people wouldn't want to break that. And this particular strategy, the one I adopted, is particularly useful for people, especially who have decided that they do want to do an LLM during the undergrad years, and so they've during their undergrad they've geared their extracurricular and academics towards getting into a good LLM program. However, I generally don't recommend an LLM degree for people who like decide at a last minute that they want to do an LLM, because to get into a good LLM program, generally, if you don't have any work experience, you do need particularly good grades. And if it's something you've decided later on, then there are a lot of instances where grades reflect that. So I'm not saying it's impossible to get into an LLM program if your grades are not of a certain level. But I do feel like as time goes on, the one thing that can make up for average grades is very good work experience. So if you're someone who has time and sees themselves in a capacity where they can do an LLM later on, then I feel like work experience really adds value to your CV, not just for getting admission, but later on for getting scholarships as well. And that's particularly true for people who either want to go into academia or want to go into consulting and don't want to go into hardcore legal practice, for them to delay the LLM would probably be a better option, because some work experience also enriches your LLM experience. So personally, when I did my LLM, I was among the very few younger people in my class, and I at that time as well, I did feel like I would have benefited more from the program had I done it later. But I also was of the opinion that I wanted to start my uh, career as soon as possible. So I wanted to do it at an earlier stage. So those are things you should decide when you're deciding on whether you're ready to do an LLM or not. And then financial considerations always play a huge role in that as well. If you're someone who aspires to get a scholarship, your application needs to be stronger, obviously, than other applications, because scholarships is something that um, are hard to get. But again, as with admissions, there's a way you go about it. If you're someone who does want or need a scholarship, then you also, that's how you pick your universities. There are certain universities who don't give scholarship regardless. Then there is universities who give merit based scholarship. So your grades and your CV and your generally application is going to have an impact on whether you get a scholarship or not. And then there are universities who, like Harvard, who provide need based financial aid. So in those particular situations, your personal situation is more important than, let's say, your application, because they want to have a more like balanced approach towards giving scholarship. So that's what you're deciding when to do an LLM. Where to go for an LLM is another very important question, because I personally feel that LLMs in the United States as opposed to LLMs in the United Kingdom require slightly different preparation when applying. So I start with the United States because that's where I applied and how I geared it. The first thing is that when you're applying and you've thought about applying at a stage where you don't have work experience, then generally I strongly recommend people to make up their minds during their law schools, because then you gear your summers and your extracurriculars towards that. By gearing your summers, I mean doing internships. So what a lot of people end up doing is that they do a lot of things, but all of those things are kind of disjointed or not interconnected. So, for instance, you're doing your extracurriculars in your university, but you're doing that as in like legal aid. But then your internships are all in either like corporate law, or you intern at a bank. That does show diversity, but that also shows kind of like lack of focus. And if I was going to pick between diversity and having like an application or having experience that's geared towards one thing, I've personally experienced that showing a commitment or interest in one thing is always better than showing diversity, especially at an early age, because you're the odds are anyway stacked against you. So you want to show that you have the maturity and clarity at that point in time. So I can give my own example for that. And so and interestingly, I also had like a diverse portfolio of what I'd done. So I'd interned in corporate law. I had been a research and a teaching assistant for a corporate governance course. But I had also worked and interned in a human rights clinic, and an organization. So what I did was, I geared one application towards a human rights aspect. So that was my Harvard application. So my Harvard application but just spoke about my work in human rights, why I want to go to Harvard, how that's going to further my interest in human rights, and what I'll do in human rights once I come back from Harvard. And whereas my application to Yale was completely geared towards corporate governance, And because that was something I could talk about with authority, because I had my CV and my extracurricular backing that. So I spoke about how corporate governance, the challenges that are faced in Pakistan, how you can overcome it, and how going to Yale is going to help me do that. So that also, giving that example is also to show you that one mistake which I think a lot of people fundamentally make is that they write one personal statement and they send them to all schools. I personally think you can do that for schools that are like your second choice, but for schools that are your primary choice, which are like the top one, two, three, whichever schools those are, your application has to be geared towards a school. Like if you even want to go to an LLM, but you want to go to Harvard for that, your your application needs to be geared towards Harvard. It needs to talk about the clinics at Harvard, the professors at Harvard, the work that's been done there. And the same is the case with Yale. If you're applying to Yale and you feel like Yale is a university that focuses more on, say, international law or corporate law or whatever, then you gear your application towards that. It's more effort, but I feel like that drastically affects your chances of getting in, because you need to show a school that you've done enough research on them, and the fact that this is the place where you want to go. When you write a generic personal statement that you send everywhere, um, someone who's helped a lot of people out in their personal statements, I can tell you it shows. And the people sitting on admissions committees have been doing this for multiple years. They can tell whether someone wants to go for an LLM or someone wants to go to Yale for an LLM. So that is something you should be particularly mindful of. And in line with that comes the second thing, is that if you've decided to do an LLM, you decide on time, meaning that you should give yourself sufficient, I would say, 3 to 5 months to write your statement, to review it again and again, to show it to people you trust, because fresh eyes are always better when you're writing something. And you give yourself that time and that mental space to write something of this magnitude of importance. What I see people do is deciding in, say, November, or deciding in end October that they want to send their applications by December. No matter how good you are at academic writing, and no matter the amount of time you put in, i can I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think your chances of getting in with a hasty applications are very, very, very low. Because because an application isn't just your application is just not your personal statement. Your application is also another equally important part, if not more important, are your recommendations. So what I usually suggest people is that if the deadline is in December, which it is for most LLMs, you start in July. By end August, you should have a personal statement that you also send to your recommenders. It is very, very important that your recommendation and your personal statement are in sync. So, for instance, and I'll give you my example for Yale. I if I applied for a governance LLM, a corporate governance program, and my focus of research while applying, which shifted later on during my LLM, but at that time was corporate governance, and actually Dr. Abbasi was my main academic recommender. It would have made for an odd recommendation if I was writing about human rights in my application, in my statement, and Dr. Abbasi was telling them that he has supervised my work on corporate governance. You can see how that shows like a disjointed application. So what I always recommend people is, first, get recommendations from people who can talk about you in a personal capacity. Professional capacity is important, but your personal statement can, your recommendation cannot be a generic one. It needs to talk about you and things that are unique to you. And the only way that can happen is if you pick your recommenders from people who really know you. The the I think the problem that comes, especially with some people applying from countries where there are a lot of applications from, recommendations tend to be generic, and it's the responsibility of the recommender as much it is of the person who's picking the recommender, that you can't have a you can't have a recommendation that says that, oh, this person this person is academically very good, or I've seen her in class and she's very brilliant. So when you talk about a personal recommendation, then you talk about things like which class did you see her in, an anecdote about him or her that you feel is important, that shows an aspect of their personality that maybe isn't shown on paper. So if anyone asks me, and there's a choice in getting a recommendation from someone who's super accomplished and very popular, as opposed to getting a recommendation from someone you've actually worked with, and someone who has an actual interest in you succeeding in life, which most mentors do. I feel like that's the person you should go to. And what you need to do is send him or her your personal statement well before time, so that the story that they tell about you and the story that you're telling about yourself are the same. And that's what I was lucky enough to have recommenders who I had worked with, who were my teachers, my friends, and my mentors in a way. So I could talk to them freely about what I was writing about. They were nice enough to gear their recommendations differently towards different schools as well. And honestly, if you have someone like that, you're very lucky, even as from the get go, because people, I feel like, underscore the importance of a well written recommendation. Who is writing the recommendation is important to what, like, 30%, but what is written in that recommendation is way more important. So that's something I particularly tell people to be very careful about. Another thing I think is important is, especially when you're applying to schools that are Ivy Leagues, is that your recommender, especially if you're from a country like India, which has a larger population, and generally schools have a trend of taking more people than one for a school. It's okay if your recommender is recommending other people as well, but I generally I generally advise people not to take recommendations from recommenders who are, let's say, recommending 10 more people. 2 to 3 is fine, but that kind of dilutes their I would say interest and commitment towards your career. Because if a recommender can't write that you are the best person in their class, I I feel like that kind of hint, if they're writing that, oh, they've taught you for like 2 courses or four and you've worked with them, but they're saying that for multiple people, that kind of dilutes the importance. So that's something people should keep in mind as well. So we've spoken about deadlines and timelines. We've spoken about like personal statements, recommenders, and what to write in your personal statement is also very important. So when you're writing a personal statement, what is important is are basically two things. Firstly, why an LLM, and secondly, why an LLM from whichever school you're applying to. So I think people tend to focus on question one way more than they tend to focus on question two. And whereas that may work for some schools, I feel like if you're someone who's aiming towards the top tier schools, it's very important that you have clarity of thought of why you want to go to that school, and why that is the only school that can help fulfill your aspirations and your careers, and what you bring to the table, what is unique about you. And for that, generally suggest people to look up a school in on their website, see publications that have come out of that school in recent years, see professors that those school employ and their work direction. And if you're smart enough and you can identify a professor you particularly want to work with, there's no harm in putting that in your personal statement. That shows that you're geared towards a particular school. In my instance, I knew I wanted to apply, so I had during my undergrad, I had written essays, or whenever I was doing research for whatever classes, I tend to incorporate works of professors at different universities in my papers, so that later on when I was applying, I could tell the university that I was familiar with the work their professors were doing. So that's one thing. And the last thing that is very important in the statement is what you're going to do after your LLM. You it's not it doesn't have to be set in black and white, but you do have to show that you have some idea. It's not an extremely long program, it's only 9 months. So you need to have like a rough roadmap of where you see yourself going from that point onwards. There are times when your roadmap completely changes once you go into an LLM program, and that's completely okay. You should actually be open to that happening, because that opens you up for other opportunities. But in your statement, you need to show what your eventual aim is. Do you want to be a public defender? Do you want to work for an international organization? Do you want to work for a government? Do you want to go into legal practice? Do you want to go into a human rights practice, into a corporate law practice? uh, I think that clarity of thought is also very important, because it kind of shows that you you're not just applying in a vacuum. You have a career set path. Another thing, if you're able to do that, is talk about alumnus of a particular school. Why you would want to go to Harvard, or why you would want to go to Stanford, is because person X from Stanford has done such great work in a particular field that you are also interested in. So you show the university that you know that the university has a legacy of producing a certain kind of academic intellect and academic orientation, which you are interested in as well. So this is what I would say is, when you're applying, you think about it. And I think that's all that I have to say. So I'm open to any questions you may have with regards to your particular situation, and I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you very much, Maham. I think you were very um, precise on your advice. So, like whether you should have work experience before you just go, and how you should target certain schools, and then who should your recommenders be. And then not only this, but good schools requires you that you should have thought through it, that what you
Yeah,
want to do after you have done your LLM.
definitely, sir. And good schools, they're so apt at filtering applications. They have so many. They can tell if the clarity is not on paper. So, because you don't get a chance for an interview for an LLM, so whatever you do has to be on paper, either by you, by on your CV, by your recommender. Someone has to say everything, so that the entire package is everything you're bringing to the table to a school.
Yeah, and I mean, specifically for these Ivy League universities, and more specifically for Harvard and Yale only takes 35 students, and definitely they just receive
24,
hundreds and
sir.
thousands. Sorry,
24.
24. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Oh my God. So you can just imagine the pool of applicants you're applying against. So I think then everything matters. So each and every word in your application basically gives you a
definitely.
sense.
Because also when they're sifting through it, there's not one person, there are multiple professors who are tenured, who have done this themselves for like 20, 30 years. So you need to give them something they're looking for. And if something doesn't set you aside from the other applications, so there are always two piles, is what I was told at Yale. Your application has to have one thing in it that puts you in a different pile then the pile that's the other pile. And then there's further sifting. So it can't be a split second decision. It has to be a meticulously planned exercise, basically.
Hmm. Okay, so Mohammed, many people are asking many questions, but I think we should take a short break. You also
Okay.
need to drink some water and
Yeah,
keep glass next to you.
I
Um,
will.
and I think we should also give our audience some time to really digest some of the information that we have given to them. So let's take 10 minutes break, and then we'll be back again.
Sounds good. Okay, sir.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Okay.